My dad works in B2B marketing, but I never really knew what that meant. Then one day my dad came by my school for career day and told everyone in my class he was a big ROAS man. Then he just kept saying things like, the bigger the ROAS, the better, over and over. My friends still laugh at me to this day. I think it means calculating a return on ad spend. One thing's for sure, I'll be known as the ROAS man's kid for the rest of my days. Why couldn't you just be a fireman or a lawyer? Why? You ruined my life, Dad.
Not everyone gets B2B, but LinkedIn has the people who do. And with ads on LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people based on job title, industry, likelihood to buy, and more. Start converting your B2B audience into high-quality leads today. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
More rewards, more savings. With American Express Business Gold, earn up to $395 back in annual statement credits on eligible purchases at select shipping, food delivery, and retail subscription merchants. Enjoy the benefits of membership with the Amex Business Gold Card. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold Card. Built for business by American Express.
Coming up on this episode of the Entrepreneurial You.
If you create intellectual property, there's a value in that, and that value is part of your business. You want to protect it, and you protect it by registering it with the correct agencies. When you're in business, you plan ahead and plan out as much as possible and write it down and execute properly. And if you need help, seek help from professionals, because that's what they're there for.
Hey, it's John Lee Dumas of EO Fire, and it's the Entrepreneurial You, the show for dedicated and passionate Caribbean entrepreneurs seeking daily inspiration, brought to you by author, speaker, and award-winning entrepreneur Heneka Watkis-Porter. You must be prepared to ignite.
Get ready, my listeners, my peak performers, for another electrifying episode of the Entrepreneurial You. And of course, this is a podcast that inspires entrepreneurs, it ignites your entrepreneurial spirit, it equips you with the insights and strategies that you need to thrive in today's dynamic business landscape. So we're all about bringing you the real conversations that matter, the inspiring stories, the powerful tips from industry leaders to help you take your business to the next level, right? Level up, we say. So today's episode features an interesting guest, Matthew Fornaro, a seasoned business law attorney serving South Florida since 2003. So he's been around with extensive experience in complex commercial litigation, construction law, and intellectual property. Matthew is dedicated to empowering small business owners and helping them navigate the often challenging legal landscape. Tell me about it, trust me. So whether you're just starting out or you've been in business for a while, you're looking to scale your business, you are absolutely in the right place. So let's dive into our conversation as we're going to unlock some success together, right? Because the more we know about the legal stuff that affects our business, the more we can be successful. The topic, let me zone in on that topic for you today. Legal essentials for entrepreneurs navigating contracts, compliance, and beyond. So looking at, as I said, navigating the legal landscape for entrepreneurs. We're going to dive right into that with Matthew Fornaro. Welcome, Matthew. So good to have you today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So if you could, this is my icebreaker question, right? If you could represent any fictional character in a legal case, who would it be and why?
A fictional character in a legal case?
Yeah.
Can I make up the case, or does it have to be?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can.
I don't know. I probably go back to my childhood and want to represent a villain in Scooby-Doo cartoon.
Oh God, that's so way back.
Scooby-Doo.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Awesome. You've been practicing law, Matthew, since 2003. What was it that inspired this direction, this career path for you? Why did you choose law?
Sure. So growing up, I always kind of liked lawyer stuff, attorney stuff. I used to watch the People's Court and stuff like that. I didn't watch like LA Law or anything like that, or Law and Order. So I kind of knew I always wanted to be an attorney. And then through going to college, law school, and early on in my career, I kind of got directed towards helping small businesses, and also resonates back to when I was growing up. My dad had a small business, so I kind of knew what he went through and things like that. When I had my opportunity to go out on my own and start my own law firm, that's when I decided to focus on helping small businesses, which is what I do.
So take us through your household. And by the way, before I even go there with you, I'm looking on your wall, all these plaques, these accolades. I'm going to want to hear a little bit about them later on, but let's take us through your household, Matthew. What was it like? Were you the one who were always solving the family's challenges, or did you have siblings?
No, I was an only child, which means I
So
had lots of toys. So
lots of toys. And did you
yeah.
have those imaginary conversations where you were poet or something, or no?
Yeah, I had during the course of stuff, I sorted out a lot of problems between G.I. Joe and Transformers and stuff like that. So
Okay. All right. So talk us through some of the things that I'm looking at on your wall. I know those who are listening to the podcast will be kind of mad because they're not seeing it, but I'm seeing it on Zoom right here. So tell us a little bit about some of those things that we're seeing on your wall.
well, this is just my background. It's just stuff from like undergrad, law school, different certificates and awards that I have. And then you can see like right there, that's for to go practice for the US Supreme Court. And then that's for the Florida Supreme Court right there that I'm pointing to. And the rest of these are just all stuff from school. So
Also from school. So yeah, congrats, well accomplished in your field. And that's why we have you here today, Matthew, on the Entrepreneurial You. We want you now to talk to us about, I know you're speaking from a United States perspective, but I'm sure a lot of what you're telling us can be replicated across the region. There are some bases in laws that are fundamental, right? Regardless of where the jurisdiction is. So as it relates to business, let's talk a little bit about the basic things that business owners struggles with. Like we struggle in terms of, we're not even going to talk about intellectual property yet, just the legal stuff, the forms, the non-disclosure agreements, and little things like those that, as business owners, we need to be mindful of. And as a legal practitioner, you can guide us through.
sure, no problem. You're in Jamaica, I'm in the United States, but we all our legal systems came from England. So, the fundamental DNA for common law systems, which is what we're based on, is pretty much the same. So what I would advise someone here, like in South Florida, just with a few nuances or changes, would be, I guess, the same thing I would tell someone in, Montego Bay or wherever in Jamaica, that it's the same exact concept. So, for instance, wherever you are starting your business, it's all about you have to make sure you have a written business plan before you do anything. And then you got to make sure you put everything in your written business plan as far as what your business is about, who's going to be in your business, what kind of business it is, what kind of business organization it is, where you're going to get funding from, how you're going to pay for things, all things like that. And that's universal. I mean, that's worldwide, even if you're outside a common law system. I mean, that's just common sense kind of thing to start with. And then you go from there, and then you move outward in actually establishing your business and doing things. So then you figure out, well, I want to be a corporation, or here in Florida or the States, you can be a limited liability company. So you pick your business organization, and then you make sure you have your governing documents for your business organization, which is like your articles of incorporation or your operating agreement. Then you make sure you register with, here in the States, it's on a statewide basis, not on a national basis. So you make sure you register in whatever state you want to do business in as your business organization, you register in your state. I know like in the Crown, different things, and common law stuff, it's national, it's nationwide. So you would register with the national government, and you basically go from there. Then you follow your business plan, come up with all your contracts, you start your bank accounts, you get all your stuff going, and it's just uphill from there.
Interesting. So what I'd love to learn from you today, Matthew, is some of those common legal business mistakes that entrepreneurs make when they're starting business.
Sure. The easiest explanation or the easiest answer is they just don't do what I just told you to do. So they don't have a written business plan. They don't properly incorporate or do what they need to do. They don't have the proper governing documents for their business organization. They don't think ahead and have a cadre of professionals that they can work with who help them with their business. Like they don't plan ahead to think of having a business law attorney or have an accountant or have a banker or have like a web IT person at their side. So those are the common mistakes that a lot of people miss when they're starting up their business. Also, they don't use contracts when they should. They do things on, like a handshake deal, or they just order something or off the internet and do whatever instead of having contracts in place. So those are some of the common startup mistakes that businesses make.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, what I'd want to talk about right now is the significance of choosing the right business structure and how that affects liability and taxes, for example.
Sure. So, picking the right business organization is something that, you should think about, obviously, and you should think about with your business law attorney and think about with your accountant to figure out what's best for your particular circumstances, because you may have certain circumstances in your personal life that'll affect your income or your assets or various things that'll affect your taxes at the end of the year, that if you were corporation, it would be much better for an LLC, or if you're something else, it'd be much better for something else. So it's something where you want to make sure that you go over as honestly as possible. You go over with your attorney and you go over with your accountant and have a consensus as to what's the best organization for you, because there's no one size fits all. It's whatever is the best for your circumstances is what you want to go with. And that's why you have like I said, a cadre of professionals who you work with who will help you make that decision, because there's no one size that fits all, but there's also no one right answer. You can do business as an LLC or a partnership or a corporation. It just depends on what your specific circumstances are.
Right. So somebody listening now trying to determine they're about to start a business, they're trying to determine, should I go an LLC? Should I do a sole proprietorship? Should I do a partnership? Help the person decide in terms of what are the parameters to be taken into consideration, the specifics that can help them to make that decision right here, because they're just about to start and they need guidance.
Sure. Well, again, it's all totally subjective and totally based on whatever your individual needs are. And again, that's something where you would work with a business law attorney and an accountant to figure out. But generally speaking, I'll speak for here in Florida, what we have as far as what you can do going on. And I'm sure that there's some similar business organizations, throughout the world that are very similar. But, you have your corporation. In America, you have not just a corporation, you have an S corporation, which means that for the IRS purposes, you're taxed as an individual and a corporation, as opposed to just having the corporate tax, which is beneficial. And that's, again, something that you would speak with your accountant about to figure out what's best for you. You have your limited liability company, or your LLC, which is another business organization, which some people think fits better for their needs. A lot of real estate investment type people use LLCs. A lot of startups use LLCs. A lot of investment companies use LLCs. Then you have a traditional partnership, like a real partnership, where you have a partnership agreement in place where you have two or more partners in a business, where it's run, 50-50 or something like that, where that could be a possibility. You have a limited liability partnership where that's an extra layer of cutting off your liability personally for things that happen in your partnership. You have a sole proprietorship, which just means you do business as yourself, which isn't really recommended for the most part, no matter where you are, because of the liability you open yourself up for, because you're individually liable for business activities and damages and things like that. So unless you have something very special in mind, generally you don't really want to be a sole proprietorship. And that's about it for the major business organizations.
All right. In terms of, let's look at a limited liability company where, the risks are passed on to the business itself and not the individual. A little more of the pros and the cons, right? I mean, I mentioned one of the
Yeah.
pro, really, but let's talk about the pros and the cons. So, and you also mentioned, as it relates to sole proprietorship, where the risk lies with the individual, right, and not the business. So
Yes.
that's obviously, one thing that goes against a sole proprietorship. So we've kind of mentioned one for each, in each case. But if you can spend a little more time, Matthew, just sharing with us the pros and the cons of both. Let's look at those two in particular, because those are where people tend to try to determine, should I do this, should I do that kind of vibe.
Sure. So for the LLC, again, it's, a fictional business organization. It's a limited liability company. So you set it up, you have what's called an operating agreement, which is your governing document for the LLC. And then in an LLC, you don't have stock, you have membership certificates, which is very similar to stock, but it's just a different name, just like how operating agreement's a different name than corporate bylaws, but they do the same thing essentially. So you have your membership certificates, and then depending on how you set up your LLC, you can have a one-person LLC or you can have as many people as you want LLC. So you set it up however you want to set it up. You put all your parameters of what you want to do, how you want to do it in your operating agreement. And then you function as your LLC when you do business. Everything's in the LLC's name. Your bank accounts are in the LLC's name. Your tax returns are for the LLC. Your assets are for the LLC. Everything you do is for the LLC. So then if there's ever a problem and you get sued or there's any kind of tax liability or anything like that, it gets passed along to the LLC instead of you individually. So it's very similar to, at least in the US, it's very similar to a corporation. There's some nuanced differences that I kind of discussed a little bit about the different documents and how you do things. So a lot of people think, and rightly so, that it's somewhat not that different from, particularly here in the United States and S corporations. So that's why there's a lot of interchange between people wanting to do them. To answer your question with the sole proprietorship just means that you're doing business as you. So you may do it with a fictitious name. You may be like, the business guru or whatever you want to call yourself, but then that's just a fictitious name. That's not really a business. It's just you using a different name. So as part of the sole proprietorship, you generally use a fictitious name that you register with, here in Florida, it would be with the Secretary of State, just like your corporations would be. Elsewhere to be with your local government, and then that's what you do business as, or you can do business as your own name. The issue is that you're individually liable for all of the consequences that happen with that business that you do in your own name. So if there's ever a lawsuit or debt owed or anything like that, you're personally liable for it. Whereas if you're an LLC, your LLC shields you from personal liability. Some of the benefits of a sole proprietorship, if you just want to keep things really simple and like your business is kind of like a side business or something, and you don't really want to go through all the formalities or any of the costs or anything, then yeah, you can just have a DBA or a side business that just does things as a sole proprietorship. The only issue is that you're going to have tax consequences no matter where you are and other consequences that go with it. But, I mean, there's some situations where, yeah, maybe a sole proprietorship is really what you need to do, but then that's also something where you want to discuss with your attorney, your accountant, and whoever else, you get advice from to figure out what's best for you.
Amazing legal advice. Well, and an insight that you're sharing, Matthew. Let's talk about intellectual property. What should I register in my business? Is just my business logo, my business name, things that I create, and what are the different layers and tiers of intellectual property registration to be considered?
Sure. So I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. I'll speak from the US and from similar organizations like that. So the thing with, and I'll discuss in generality intellectual property. So intellectual property, there's different categories. There's Patents, which are like when you invent something or come up with something that you want to protect that invention, or you come up with a new system or something like that. So you want to protect that so no one else can copy it. So you register your patent here in the US. That's a federal entity. You register at the United States Patent and Trademark Organization, and you can actually register and get international protection as a follow-up to that. So that's if you're developing an invention, a system, something along those lines that hasn't ever been done before. Then there's trademarks, which are, again, in the US, you can register both state and federal trademarks. It's more advisable to do federal because you get better protection. And that's also something that you can also then parlay into international protection. And trademarks are logos, mottos, designs, different things that you put into a tangible medium that you want to protect. So your name could be a trademark, your logo could be a trademark, like your business identity could be a trademark. And that's something where you don't want people to go around saying you're the same business as you or their same name as you. So that's why you go register your trademark, or they have the same logo as you, or they're copying your logo or something like that. So that's when you register your trademark to make sure that you can protect that image or that name or that likeness or whatever from it being copied or from someone trying to profit off of your work. Copyright, which is kind of the third thing, is when you reduce something to a tangible medium, like if you read a book or you read a song or you come up with like a TikTok or a YouTube video or something, you want to copyright it so that people can't copy it and appropriate it and do things like use it, use your video for their presentation or use your music without their knowledge or use your book without your express consent or paying you. So that's, again, another thing that's federally registered in the US, but it's also you get a common law copyright on anything you do. So the moment you create it, it's automatically protected by law in the US, but you also have the right to register it too. So those are the three main areas of intellectual property. Then there's things like trade secrets, which would be like, it's kind of like patents, but it's something where you want to keep it secret and never divulge it, like the secret recipe to Coca-Cola or the secret recipe to the Colonel's spices and flavors at KFC. Those are things that you don't ever want to get out. So that's something you want to protect with a trade secret. And then there's other things that relate to intellectual property, like licensing, where you can license out the use of someone else's intellectual property. You pay them royalties or something like that to use their intellectual property. So maybe you invented something or came up with something, but you don't really want to produce it or market it. You want someone else to do it. Well, then you need to enter into a licensing agreement, which is just a contract to do it. So generally speaking, if you create intellectual property, there's a value in that. And that value is part of your business. And that's, you want to protect it, and you protect it by registering it with the correct agencies and enforcing your copyright protection.
So you said earlier that it's in copyright common law that once you create something, it's automatically protected in common law because you created it. So with that being the case, why then do we need to go beyond that and register? And what are the different levels of registration that are acceptable? And I ask this against the backdrop of, in Jamaica, we are very familiar with what is called the poor man's copyright, where you do something, you mail it to yourself, you never ever open that envelope, for example. Should something go wrong, then you're able to prove, the date when it was postmarked and stuff like that. So with what you've said, why is it important to even go beyond and to create that registration? And even what are the registration, elements that are accepted, for want of a better word, because it can be a very expensive process for a small business owner.
Correct. And the thing with copyright is it's different. It's not the United States Patent and Trademark Office in the US. It's the Copyright Office, which is run by the Library of Congress. And it's actually, copyrights are very inexpensive versus trademarks, and especially versus patents. So the reason why you want to register your copyright materials, because of provability to third parties. And what does that mean? Well, obviously, if I wrote something, I know I wrote it this date. I can easily remember what date I wrote it because I wrote the date on top of the thing or whatever, and I did it. But if I want to show a third party that that's what I wrote when I wrote it, what I did, if there's ever any controversy or something, then it's a lot easier if it's registered with someone to show that I created this on this date and this is what I created than it is for me to just take my word for it, I swear, and then have to prove it that way. So it adds a level of protectability because if you register it, then you're telling the whole world what it is, when it was registered, when it was created, and who owns it, versus me having to then go out and be like, well, I found this guy who stole my book, but nobody knew about my book other than me. So I have to go back and do things like forensically audit my computer to show that it was created in whatever date, or go back and find an email that I emailed it to someone else versus just having it registered. And that's why the difference between just having the common law right to copyright versus actually registering it is much more advantageous to be able to prove to a third party.
Can you speak a little to that poor man's copyright system that I mentioned?
That doesn't really exist in the US because
it doesn't. Okay.
No, it's you copyright it by writing it down. So it's already copyrighted before you even put the envelope in the mail.
Right.
But so, then the envelope is it's not really going to prove anything to anyone. It's just the same thing as if you didn't do it at all. So it's better to register it than it is to just write it down, send it to yourself and be like, oh, I got a postmark, I'm good.
Yeah. So essentially then the burden of proof lies with you, the individual business owner, not necessarily the state or the opponents. Huh?
Correct. It's your burden to prove if someone else is making a claim to it, you have to be able to show it's yours. And the easiest way to do that is by having already registered it.
Yeah. All right. Lot said, enough said, as we say in Jamaica, enough said. So I'm going to pause right here and go into the community connections segment. And then after that, I'm going to just come back and ask you, Matthew, to give us your final thoughts, where we can get your freebie and where we can connect with you further. Okay. So let's go into the community connection segment. And in this segment is where I invite you or a community of peak performers to share your reviews, questions, feedback, and whatever you want to share to engage with me, just so I know I'm not talking to myself and my guest alone. So this week, I'm sharing a book review from my book, Podcast Power, the Quick Start Guide to Launching and Leveling Up Your Brand. And it's coming from Donald Kelly out of the United States of America. I'm a podcaster, but I have not launched a show in a while. Reading Heneka's book helps me to focus on things that I previously overlooked in the process. She masterfully guides you as a reader and gives you the confidence to take action. I highly recommend anyone remotely interested in podcasting to check this out. It's truly worth it. Thank you, Donald. And that's been Community Connection. Back with you, Matthew. Back with Matthew Fornaro. And he was talking a lot before we go into the Community Connection segment about copywriting, the whole intellectual property issue, and how, common law really doesn't really hold much water, as we say, because the burden of proof lies with you, the individual. And so it is best to go the legal route to make sure that you're protected. You work hard for your intellectual property to develop your logos, your trade secret, whatever it is. You've worked hard for it, and so you should do whatever you can to protect it. Matthew, wrap with your final thoughts, please, as well as, give us where we can reach you for further discourse, as well as any free content that you have for us.
Sure. So it was great being here. Thank you for having me, Heneka. I appreciate being on in front of all our friends in Jamaica. I love Jamaica. It makes me I want to go have a red stripe and have some meat pie or something.
And some jerk chicken and pork.
Some jerk goat. Believe it or not, I love jerk goat.
Jerk goat?
Yeah.
Okay, that's new. All right.
Yeah. I went to a thing once where it was a Caribbean night and they had jerk goat and I was like, this is really good.
Ah, interesting.
So, but Anyways, alas, I get off subject. So if you want to reach me, the easiest way to reach me is just go to my website, fornarolegal.com, which is my last name, legal.com, and it's got all my contact information and my social media on it. And then I have a bunch of different videos, podcasts, papers, and blogs that pretty much answer a lot of your common business questions. And if not, you can always just email me or call me.
Nice, fantastic. Do you have anything you want to share with us as a final thought around what we've been discussing, Matthew?
Yeah, just, like we discussed initially, just make sure when you're in business, you plan ahead and plan out as much as possible and write it down and execute properly. And if you need help, seek help from professionals because that's what they're there for.
All right. And of course, Fornaro Legal is a place for you to go. FornaroLegal.com is where you can go to just be introduced. Well, you've been introduced on the podcast, but dive further, and then you can reach out to Matthew. I'm sure he's excited to hear from you. So please go ahead and reach out. Let me just go into trending now. And it's legal trends for small businesses. In recent years, navigating legal challenges have become a significant concern for small businesses. In fact, according to the Small Business Administration, nearly 60% of small businesses reported facing legal issues last year, as in 2024, ranging from compliance requirements to intellectual property disputes. With the evolving regulatory landscape, what new legal trends are emerging in 2025 that business owners should be aware of? That's what we need to think about as we go, because that's what's trending now in business, to make sure that we stay compliant, stay protected, and be proactive for 2025 and beyond. So Matthew, earlier you shared how you were happy to be here, and I want to tell you that I am happy to have had you to share your insights. Your years of experience has surely shine as you spoke so eloquently, so adeptly about legal matters for entrepreneurs. And thank you for joining me and for sharing your valuable expertise on the importance of legal guidance in entrepreneurship.
Thank you for having me, Heneka. I appreciate it.
Awesome. And to you, our peak performers, remember to seek out the right support as you navigate your entrepreneurial journey. Taking care of the legal details, it is absolutely essential for long-term success. And I know this because I have been through a legal battle with concerning intellectual property before. More on that at another time. But I want you to, in the meantime, stay inspired. Subscribe now and join the community of listeners if you've not yet subscribed. All right, and leave a rate and review. Believe me, it helps so much to get this podcast noticed, because one of the challenges we have with podcasting is discoverability. And the more you engage with a podcast, it's the more we are able to reach others and reach the right ears. All right. So thank you for doing that. I'm Heneka Watkis-Porter, and this has been the Entrepreneurial You. Stay inspired, stay proactive, and keep reaching new heights. And I ask you to affirm with me. I'm open to the possibilities that each day brings. I trust in my ability to adapt and thrive, knowing that every experience contributes to my growth. When I lead with integrity, I empower those around me to do the same. I recognize the impact of my words and actions. They can uplift and inspire. Again, until I connect again, I will embrace my journey with enthusiasm and purpose. And you go out there and shine your light, because you're a light to this world, all right? I want to say quickly thanks to our sponsors, the Jamaica Stock Exchange, and of course, HenekaWatkis-Porter.com. Do take care.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Robbie Samuels hosts the On the Schmooze podcast. Robbie, tell listeners what to expect from the show.
Since 2015, I've interviewed entrepreneurs who overcame challenges to achieve success in their field or industry. Tune in to On the Schmooze to listen as I ask deep questions to elicit untold stories about leadership and networking.
And where can people subscribe?
Find the show at ontheschmooze.com or on marketingpodcast.net, or just search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard them. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.